We're here today to introduce two bills that are being carried in both houses. One is to make the concealment of a human corpse and dismemberment of a human corpse bail eligible. Shockingly, it's not. And to clarify some provisions regarding custodial aspects of GPS monitoring, that is not to be considered custodial. So the real global issue here is, once again, we're trying to fix the ill-conceived bail reform statute. We are now on our fourth iteration of bail reform, and we're looking for a fifth. And remarkably, we're the one state in the union, we're the one out of 50, all 49 states and the federal level have a dangerousness standard that a judge can consider with respect to judicial discretion and as to whether or not they should hold individuals charged with particular crimes. And of course, this is in response to the case on Long Island where 4 individuals dismembered and scattered human body parts around western Suffolk County and eastern Nassau County. Actually, the case was put together. They were charged with tampering with evidence and destruction of a human corpse. And pursuant to New York state law, it was mandatory that they be released. And they also are being monitored by GPS devices. And in fact, that is an application that needs to be renewed every 3 to 5 days, because that is not a permanent thing with respect to their location. So when you think about the level of depravity needed to dismember a human body and then drive around and toss the body parts around, some of those parts were found within a few hundred yards of an elementary school, that level of depravity is not serious enough for our laws in New York State to allow a judge to hold those people pending trial. And what's even more alarming is we have a governor who then criticized the district attorney in Suffolk County and said, you know what, maybe they should have overcharged or maybe charged crimes that they don't in fact have proof of, like murder, in order so they could hold that person, which is just astonishing when you think about it. And I can guarantee you, if District Attorney Ray Tierney had any proof or legitimate proof of the actual murder charge, which may come down the road, then he in fact would have charged it. But at this point, apparently the governor seems to think that dismembering a human being and tossing those body parts around the village and town is not serious enough for us to amend our law and ultimately make these crimes bail eligible. And so when you think about all that we have in front of us, this is yet just more of a global discussion about how wrong the bail reform statute is. And I can guarantee you there will most likely be additional crimes and additional horrific events in our society that will require us to stand here again and call for yet another revision. And as I said, we're on revision 4, and we're asking for now a 5th revision, where very simply, just one simple change to be in line and to be consistent with the rest of the country is to provide a dangerousness standard. So I'm joined by some of my colleagues from both houses, and this is not political. This is simply about public safety. The resistance to it actually doesn't make any sense to me. And when you have a governor who's sending 1,000 National Guardsmen to the subway, she's thinking that's a good idea to let everyone know I'm coming after retail theft, I'm coming after, the bad guys in the subway because subway crime is up, I'm doing the right thing by society. It's just, unfortunately, politics at play. I can guarantee you, the largest police force in the country, and I believe the world, the NYPD, can certainly adequately patrol and police our subways. They're just handcuffed. She could send 10,000 National Guardsmen into the subway, but it's the stroke of a pen that will make the difference. It's the law that is causing this problem, not the lack of law enforcement. So I'm going to turn this over to Assemblyman Mike Durso, who's carrying these bills in the Assembly, for a few comments. But Mike, if you'd like to say a few words, please go ahead.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Thank you to Senator Palumbo and Senator Canzanieri Fitzpatrick for allowing me to carry both these bills in the Assembly. It just goes to show you that since 2019, when bail reform went through, for the past 5 years, members of this legislature have been fighting to fill the gaps, to fix the problems that were originally constituted with bail reform. These are two problems right here, for example, that we're putting, for lack of a better word, a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, right? When you have a law in place that it makes it non-bail eligible to cut up, dismember human remains, and then disregard the law, disregard human life, disregard the people in the communities, surrounding communities, where you could literally throw human body parts, including arms, legs, and a torso, a head, out the car window like a cigarette butt, and expect to not be held in prison, be held with bail, is insane to me. The fact that we're even sitting here having to put these bills in is just downright insane. You could talk to any constituent I have, any member of my family, probably anybody here, and anybody here would sit here and say, that just sounds crazy. Anybody that's willing to do that, that has the ability to do that, I consider dangerous. I'm not a judge, I'm not an attorney. But the fact that they're out roaming the street, and there was reports of them being arrested, charged, put an ankle monitor on them, and then they were hanging out in the public library in Amityville right afterwards, makes me fearful for my children. Someone that is willing to cut up human remains and just disregard them and throw them out into the public for a child on their way to school to find, to me, is dangerous. And they're a danger to public safety. And then, as Senator Palumbo said, for the governor to then come out and attack our district attorney and our members of the police department saying they're not doing their job, we're not doing our job. The governor is not doing their job by addressing the gaps that are in the bail reform laws. We are able to do that now, and we're constantly piecemealing it together year by year and adding more things to ways to fix it. Why don't we just repeal bail reform and put something together that works? I don't think there's anybody that disagrees with the fact that probably at the time the intention was to not have people sit in jail for nonviolent crimes and less egregious crimes, small crimes. At the time, marijuana was legal, and there was people sitting in jail that couldn't afford to be bailed out because of small crimes. And there are people that can agree with that. This is not that. These are people that are willing to dismember a human body. You think an ankle monitor is going to stop them? You don't think they could cut that ankle monitor off? With the weapons that were found in their homes, with dismembered body parts. Again, just to say that, to reiterate that again, they were found with body parts in their home, cut up human corpses. These are dangerous people. And New York State needs to get it together and understand that keeping people safe is what our job is. And the governor and the majority in the legislature has refused to do that time and time again. Now is the time that they can do it. Now is the time for them to step forward. Let's fix the bail reform laws to make it that everyone in New York State is safe, and that's why we're here today. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and I'm proud to carry these two bills. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Thank you, Assemblyman. We will now hear from Senator Canzoneri Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. It's like a fever dream to stand here and have to argue against these laws. As a mom of 4 children, I would be horrified if my children were one of those walking home from school to find dismembered body parts. It is unthinkable for that community. We stood there on Friday in that park, and I have to tell you, it was eerie, it was creepy. I didn't feel safe. If we don't feel safe in our communities, we don't do anything. We don't go to parks, we don't go shopping, we don't go to work, we don't visit our family. Basic right in our community is to feel safe, and we don't have that. We have a legislature that is controlled by one party and a governor who refuses to acknowledge that bail reform is the problem, which is why we continue on this path of piecemeal legislation to adjust the problems. The governor initially said the judges didn't understand the bail reform laws and blamed the judges. Now she's blaming the DAs. Well, why didn't you do a more thorough investigation and come up with charges that were in fact bail eligible? As was just said by my colleagues, cutting up and dismembering a body is such a depraved thing to do. Those people clearly are dangerous. One of the very first bills I introduced when I came into the Senate was giving back the judges discretion to consider dangerousness, because every other jurisdiction does it. It's common sense. You're nullifying our judiciary if you don't allow them to make a decision based on the facts in front of them, based on the arguments in front of them, understanding the prior crimes of that individual. It is just common sense that judges need to be considering the dangerousness of the person in front of them. I am shocked that the governor has not responded. I am shocked that the legislature has not acted. However, we are trying to do the best we can with legislation. One of the things that came out was they put 4 monitors, ankle monitors, on these individuals that were arrested, these criminals. And now they were saying, well, no, you can't do that because it's custodial in nature. So that's why we reacted with my bill, which is co-sponsored in the Assembly by Assemblyman Durso, to say that the GPS monitoring is not custodial, so that at least this judge's decision, the judge that had these individuals before him, that judge's decision will be respected, to say that, yes, we're going to at least monitor these dangerous individuals, make sure we know where they are. If they had the capability of beheading a woman, they clearly have the ability to cut off a monitor. But at least we're trying to do something to keep these individuals from running amok and doing worse things in our community. Just today, we had an article about the family of the man who was dismembered. How horrific for that family. Think about that. We are living in a society where that person goes free. It could happen to any one of us. And that's why we have to do better. We have to pass some of these bills to correct the situation. As was stated, nobody wants someone staying in jail for minor crimes. That's not what we want. But the pendulum has swung so far past where we should be that now we are stuck with making these corrections based on these horrific situations that we are now faced with. So I applaud my colleagues in government for doing the best that we can to make corrections to a very bad system. And I agree, we should have revoked bail reform and started over. But unfortunately, as I said, my colleagues across the aisle do not acknowledge that bail reform is to blame for these problems. And until we get there, we're not going to fix this problem. But we will do the best. We will continue to fight the fight for everybody that we represent, because that's our job. I want to introduce Assemblyman John McGowan, who will now share some thoughts about this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. And I want to thank my colleagues who have put forth this legislation. You know, when I was thinking about this story when it first broke and what had happened, and then thinking about this morning what we needed to do to move forward, I thought to myself, wow, New York, you've done it. New York, you have now turned our state into a Stephen King novel. You've turned our state into a horror movie. Because imagine the plot of a movie where somebody dismembers corpses, then distributes those body parts, is arrested, and then set free. But unfortunately, this is not a horror movie or a novel. This is real life. This is New York in 2024, where you can commit this offense and the judge cannot even consider bail for you. And when ankle monitors, a monitoring device is placed on those defendants, it's considered custodial, and applications have to be filed to continue to monitor these dangerous individuals. This is insane. The state of New York in 2024. I come here as a former prosecutor in both the Bronx and Rockland County, and I worked before these bail reform laws were put into place. And I can tell you from experience, asking for bail and having bail set was no easy task and was certainly not guaranteed. But when you listen to the proponents of bail reform, they make it as if anyone who appears in front of a judge would automatically be held on bail and unable to pay that bail. Well, that simply is not the case. That wasn't true from my experience. And what we've done, as one of my colleagues mentioned, is swing the pendulum so far the other way that no one who's being honest can tell you that New York is safer now than it was before these measures were put into place. And it's not just bail reform, it's the other so-called criminal justice reforms, the discovery reforms, the other laws that were put into place. And ultimately, what did they do? They create the culture in New York that we have of being less safe, prioritizing criminals over victims, prioritizing criminals over the safety of residents. A kid walking home from school, is he gonna have clean slate from that memory of seeing and encountering the gruesome scene that he did? This is where we are, and we cannot continue to turn a blind eye as a state and pretend that things are better because they're not. They simply aren't, and we, as a state, must do better. I applaud my colleagues for introducing this legislation. I look forward to advocating with them, along with our colleagues who are here today, to continue to fight against these measures, which simply are unacceptable. And we, collectively, must do better. And I promise you that everyone standing here will continue to fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblyman. And collectively, what all my colleagues have just said, it's really gotten down to a real simple thought at this point. Because I was a member of the Assembly in 2019, and I debated the original bail reform bill when it was all violent felonies were ineligible for bail. And I said, look, I handled these cases when I was a prosecutor. You know, manslaughter in the second degree, when you're drunk driving and you kill people, that's a non-violent Class C felony. And they said, oh, no, we have other means and measures that will take care of that. Don't you worry. We understand that that wouldn't be bail, but that's really unfair. And then it was implemented in January 2021. The world went sideways. And for political reasons, because it was exposed at how awful the statute was, in that budget, within a few months, they corrected that. And then, as I said, version 2, version 3, version 4. So at this point, and really it lands in the lap of the governor. We're in the budget season now where the governor has tremendous leverage. You can't claim that you really didn't know. Right? You can't say that, well, we weren't, that was an omission. That was an oversight. Dismembering human beings, missed that one. We should have thrown that one in as bail eligible now. We just keep coming back, and now we're at the point where it's 4 years in, and we need to make some really broad stroke changes. Add a dangerousness standard would be the easiest way to do it. Very simple. Is it needs to be fixed, because either at the time, if you didn't really know, you weren't sure, we don't have people who are that dumb in this business, quite frankly. They're well aware as to what damage this is causing to public safety and to New Yorkers as a whole. So we need to get this right. We need to fix it now.